Hello, everyone. My name is Korkor. I'm the founder and the CEO of the A.B. Korkor Foundation for Mental Health. I thank you again for joining me today on our Share Your Story event. The individual that's sharing her story today with us is very special. Her story with depression has been very, very challenging and difficult, like all stories associated with this challenging illness. The loss of several friends and families with suicide has brought her depression and her awareness of the impact that it has on her life and other people's life into a new journey titled Giving Voices for Depression. I'm really proud to introduce to you Terry, who's not only going to be sharing her story and her mission, but also she's now a member of our foundation. Terry, it's a pleasure having you here. And
Thank
please
you.
Share with us your story. And I truly admire your mission, and I admire what you've gone through and what you're able to reinvent and help not only yourself, but others on your journey.
Thank you. That's lovely. I'm going to get a little bit teary here. I'm going to try to share my screen and do it with the presentation, but what you just said is lovely. So, as I say again, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the free resource I created and that since July I have produced in partnership with your foundation. As you say, it's not only for people like myself who live with depression, but for people who wish to better understand the mood disorder so that they can support the people in their lives who struggle with it. And given that 1 in 5 people, 1 in 5 adults experiences a mental illness in a given year, there are an awfully lot of us out there. We are very appropriately having this discussion during Mental Illness Awareness Week. And as you well know, Dr. Korkor, the more we talk about our personal experiences with anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, or other common illnesses, the more we let other people know that they're not alone, they're not broken, they're not other, and just because of the things that are going on in their minds and bodies. I will begin with a story, then tell a bit about my story, and then talk about how sharing other people's stories is providing information, connection, and hope to people on a daily basis. The story's from an episode of The West Wing, that show that used to be on. It's about a guy who falls in a hole and can't get out. A doctor walks by. Here's the man calling help from down inside that hole, and he drops down a prescription for a little something that might help. A religious leader hears his cries and heads over to the pit and offers a prayer from that bright light above. Then a regular guy sees a fellow human being trapped in that hole, struggling in the darkness, and he jumps in. The first guy calls him an idiot and says, "Oh, great, now we're both stuck down here." But the second guy says, "Yeah, but I've been here before, so I know you can get out." The pit is something I did not know, understand, or talk about much myself until 2012, when I suddenly and unexpectedly lost a niece. Visiting with my sister, her mother, hours after she got the news of her daughter's death, I realized that we are not taught how to sit in darkness with people, to just be there as support, without needing to try to fix or make sense of anything or say the right thing, when in fact, most of the words that come to mind in a lot of those difficult situations are often the wrong thing. So in her honor and memory, I decided to learn how to do that better. I trained to be both a crisis line and hospice listener, and I volunteered at a suicide prevention line, understanding that even when we can't change another person's situation, we can be there for them and help validate their experience. Unfortunately, I had to quit my job as a crisis line worker when my own depression got so bad that I realized I was better qualified to be a caller than to answer another person's call. And when I told my supervisor that, we had a great laugh, but I wasn't kidding. That was the beginning of my worst ever bout of depression. Unlike the guy in the story, when I was deep in the darkness, no one shouted down support, let alone jumped in to show me the way out. I don't say that as a judgment of my family or friends. I recognize that it's a direct byproduct of stigma. Because people don't talk about mental health struggles, people don't know how to talk about them. So when I would muster up the energy to actually share that I am exhausted on a cellular level, that some days I literally can't find the will or energy to get out of bed, or even that I didn't see the point in living anymore, the most common responses were, "I'm tired too." you look fine, or the crowd favorite, some version of, what do you have to be sad about? Even on the rare occasion that I trusted someone enough to disclose that I went to bed most nights hoping to not wake the next morning, replies were uncomfortable, unhelpful, and uninformed. Never once did a friend or family member say, hey, you think you could be depressed? Maybe you should see a doctor. Even though I am certain that if I'd had any physical challenge for months on end, even a slight limp, it would have caught someone's attention, been recognized as a medical issue that should probably get checked out. I might have even gotten a ride to the doctor. Instead, for the better part of 2 years, I believed depression's every lie, which is easy to do when they play on a constant loop in your diminished mind. I believed I was pretty much done, that neither I nor my life had any particular value anymore. The way I felt, I came to believe was the way I was always going to feel from then on, that way or worse. Even when I had to work out of the house or socialize and actually be with other people, I felt alone, there, but not really there. The phrase that went through my head all the time was that I was broken. That's what I thought when I was speaking to myself gently anyway. Looking back, it's almost embarrassing how long it took me to name and treat that depression, especially since I had actually experienced it before and even been on meds. I know it doesn't make sense. I also know that it doesn't have to be true and a common experience. When I finally did come out of it and had a floor beneath my feet again, that was with the help of a doctor, meds, which fortunately worked for me, therapy, and self-care. I could not shake my new, deep, and very raw understanding of how absolutely natural, even logical, it would have felt to give in, to give up. I just couldn't tuck away what I'd learned. It wouldn't stay tucked. The seeds of omission, if you will allow for that word, were as unrelenting as depression's thoughts had been. I felt compelled to figure out a way to use that new lived experience and climb back down into that pit to help guide others out, or at least to show them that there is an out. It's what I now know is called peer support. Between careers in broadcast news and recording narrations, I had literally made a living with my voice for 4 decades. I realized I could give voice to depression, speak about the unspeakable, name the unnamed, and help to humanize and normalize talking about depression and other mental health challenges. A podcast where people shared about their own experiences getting into and out of the darkness was the perfect vehicle to reach people, to literally meet them where they are, even if where they are is curled up in bed. Here's a 5-minute video that I just put together to let people know that this resource is available any time of the day or night, anywhere in the world. I want to talk about depression and suicide prevention, and the fact that talking about depression is a form of suicide prevention. I live with the mood disorder myself, and as creator and producer of the Giving Voice to Depression podcast, I've had the privilege of interviewing hundreds of others who do as well, and they have a lot to say. But people are generally satisfied with the fine we reflexively offer when asked how we're doing. What's not fine is stigmatizing depression, treating it like it's a weakness or a failing, when in truth, it requires incredible resilience to keep going every day when your own mind, in your own voice, is telling you there's no point. Giving Voice to Depression offers safe places to both share and learn. On our weekly podcast, people with depression talk candidly and shamelessly about their experience of the illness, including what it feels like to be in it and what their warning signs and coping mechanisms are. We can learn so much from each other, including the fact that while our experience of depression is ours alone, the experience of depression is surprisingly universal.
There are people all over the world that unfortunately have lost their battle with depression because they just did not have the resources available or the understanding people to talk to that could meet them where they're at.
And then I listened to your podcast and I heard other people sharing their stories, and it just was revelatory.
It helps so much to know that other people understand how I feel. Thank you so much for being there.
It's possible that I wouldn't even be here now if I didn't have podcasts to listen to in the middle of the night and know that I'm not alone.
It's like all the lost hope coming back to me. Maybe in the stories you share or in that empathy that one can hear in your voice. It's like you're not alone. You have people who care about you, who care enough to share their stories with you, who care enough to put out a podcast.
It was really like walking into a lit room out of a dark place that I had been in for a long, long time. It was like, wow, this is the peace. I'm not a bad human being. You know, I'm worthy of love. I'm a good guy. I'm a good human being.
Thank you very much for standing up for all the people out there that need to be heard, that need to be understood, that need healing in the right way.
We know not everyone listens to podcasts, and that some people prefer a more interactive medium. So we've also created a highly engaged and supportive Facebook community. More than 9,000 people are already there waiting to support you. Fellow humans who get what you're going through because they've experienced and survived something very similar.
There are a lot of people out there that don't have support. Coming across this has done wonders for me because you guys say don't believe depression's lies when I'm sitting here by myself believing them.
When I get very depressed, I feel like I'm so alone. And when I hit that page and I realize that I'm not alone, I'm not abnormal. See, I'm going to cry. I better not cry. It just gives me a sense of belonging. That's the word. It gives me a sense of belonging, and I need that.
Mm-hmm. We all do.
In silence, we give more power to our depression, and that's never a good thing.
We all just inspire each other. We give each other strength and hope, and we educate each other, and that's what we have to do.
And that's really, really important for letting you move on and move forward with baby steps. And knowing even that if you stumble, there's somewhere where you can go to be lifted up.
It's said being heard and being loved feels so similar that for many they're indistinguishable. We all deserve to be heard, understood, and supported. Check out a few of our hundreds of podcast episodes and join us on the Giving Voice to Depression Facebook community page. Because depression is just too dark a road to walk alone. So I launched that back in February 2017. And in the years since, we have grown to a tiny team of 5. That includes my sister, who you're seeing there in the picture. She's my co-host who also lives with depression. She's also my best friend. Our audio engineer, a graphic artist who creates our daily posts, and Sarah, who is our social media manager. And she really watches that Facebook page you just heard about to make sure that it is always very responsive and very respectful. It's online in the 2021, and it's a tricky time to keep something safe and respectful, but she does both on a daily basis. So we post original content across most of the social media platforms, offering a daily touch point. We use direct quotes from each week's podcast guest, and these are from when you were the guest, Dr. Korkor, as well as encouraging quotes that we see other places. And we try to share them every single day because that gives them people a reason to come to our sites and to our website and to our Facebook page. And also it keeps conversations about mental health going. During the pandemic, our online Facebook community grew from about 7,000 people to more than 10,000. I said 9 in the video, but it's grown another 1,000 since. It's a highly engaged community. And that's proof, I think, that more than ever, people are looking for real-time connection and interaction. And the fact that we respond to everybody who writes there and acknowledge that we read it lets them know there's a real person there and that their voice matters, that they are being seen and heard, which is something that depression tells you is not really true. And so that's another reason we do it. When someone's really struggling, And in this community, that often means that they're battling suicidal thoughts, will ask their permission to share their struggle with the community. And this was in response to that person's post. His name is Nick. And because of the lived experience, there is always just this outpouring of empathy. Hundreds of people will post supportive comments. They'll send love, share that they've been in that same dark and dangerous place, and that the crisis period does not last, which is information that is critically important to get out to people, because when you are there, if you think that's the way you're always going to be, I think it would be a very difficult thing to choose to live with. And knowing that it is going to pass, because people who have been there tell you that, can be life-saving. The person who read these particular posts was reading them in a hospital emergency room waiting for psychiatric admission. His name was Nick, and he learned of the Facebook community from the podcast, which was recently named the best depression podcast on the planet. I just love that, on the planet part, on the popular blog FeedSpot. So while it is commonly believed that people do not want to talk about or hear about mental illness, that has not been our experience. In 2017, when we launched, we had 16,000 plays. Our second year, that grew to 79,000. In 2019, our guest stories of resilience and hope were heard 150,000 times, and last year, more than 200,000. This year, we're reaching even more people. In total so far, the personal stories shared weekly have been heard more than 607,000 times in more than 50 countries. Think about that. It means that more than 600,000 times, somebody, often somebody in distress, you in crisis, as you just saw, has reached out for and found a story similar enough to their own that they could relate to it and feel less alone. Stories that name depression as an illness, speak about management, tools, and techniques, and illustrate through personal, engaging, credible stories of lived experience the very real possibility of recovery. It's peer support in the privacy of your own headphones. In Matt Haig's book, which is a very popular one called Reasons to Stay Alive, he writes, "You are no less or more of a man or woman or human for having depression than you would be for having cancer or cardiovascular disease or a car accident. What should we do? Talk, listen, encourage talking, encourage listening, keep adding to the conversation." We are honored and proud to have added to the conversation on a daily basis for more than 4.5 years. And we are grateful for our new partnership with the A.B. Korkor Foundation for Mental Health, which is making it possible for us to continue this work. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than glad to answer them.
Hey, I've watched this video several times, and every time I watch it, I learn more, and I see more in the words, and I see more in the expressions that people have. You know, I do have some questions for you, and I've always wondered, depression is clearly, from what we understand it today, there is a significant biochemical events that are happening in our brain that's triggering a lot of these emotional difficulties. But is depression like pregnancy? You either have it or you don't. Is there a spectrum of depression that we experience that could fluctuate day to day, hour to hour, months to months, winter, summer, fall, winter? Is there a spectrum of depression that goes from being sort of a mild, something that we don't have to deal with or seriously affecting our life, to something that is as severe as the one that you've experienced and others have, that ultimately led to them taking their own life? You know, can you comment on that?
I think there is. I think there's a spectrum of what you can have, and I think there's a spectrum of what people experience. So I think that I generally don't have depression. When I get it, boy, do I get it. I think there's a hormonal component to mine, because 13 and 53 were the 2 times I had really bad depression, and those are sort of hormonal bookends for some women. I know that there are people.
I missed that. What was that? The 1353?
when I was 13 and when I was 53.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Those were like major hormonal events in my body.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that contributed. There's also stuff going on. So I think that those things factor in. I know that there are some people who live with it chronically. There are some people who every single day battle this. And oh, my heart breaks for them, because the times I've had it, I've dipped in between those two really bad times, and I've had to go on and off meds. But the people I talk to, as I say, there are those who just wake up every day disappointed that they woke, and they try things and treatments and medications and natural things and meditation and all the things that you say to use, and it doesn't seem to have any impact. Treatment resistant depression. And then there are those of us like myself who, there are days, down days. Everybody has down days. That doesn't even have to be a clinical thing, but who have depression and might dip in and out of it based on a lot of things, including life. I had, my worst one was also precipitated in part by a divorce and a move, and a number of other things that I look at as almost reducing my immune system. That when your immune system is compromised, something can clobber you. And that is, I feel like the gate opened for my depression. And then there's biochemical stuff, and there's ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, all of which set you up for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's my understanding and experience. I mean, you're the doctor. I only have anecdotal evidence, but that's what stories are all about.
Sure, sure.
Is that your understanding as well?
I think so. I think there's a spectrum, and I also, there are some situational events that might trigger depression and anxiety, and it might just go away once that situation is resolved, whether it's a job, employment, relationship, financial
COVID.
situation. What?
COVID.
COVID. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing I take from listening to your podcast and watching the presentation you had, the video, is that really reaching out is so important.
Mm-hmm.
What happened, when you sort of meet a wall where you have a partner who doesn't really understand what you're going through? You have parents who you really, say, why don't you just pick it up and go? I mean, they don't really understand that it's not something that you can just pick it up and go. I've known people who have actually looked at mental illness as sort of an excuse for people to get away from certain things. So how do you deal with those challenges? I'm glad that there's your podcast and others that are available out there that people can put their headphone on, talk to others, or listen to others sharing their stories. But sometimes I think those challenges that people have is really real, where you have a spouse who doesn't understand, a parent who don't understand, friends who can't figure it out. Where do you go?
I think the best advice might be to somebody else with it, because somebody else is going to understand it. That was the idea of starting that community on the Facebook page, because if somebody says, boy, I'm really in it, nobody's going to say, well, you're lazy. Maybe you're just lazy, because they know exactly what it feels like, or exactly what theirs feels like. I know that to say, you need to reach out, ask for help. It's real. I mean it, and it's good advice, and it is the way to get help. But just because you reach out doesn't mean you're going to get it. It doesn't mean, as you say, that your partner, that your parents, that your friends are going to understand. It doesn't mean that the medical field or the psychiatric field is going to be available to you, is going to respond, is going to listen to you. I just got someone just commented on the Facebook page today that he has suicidal thoughts regularly, and tells people, and they say, oh, you seem fine, and he's not getting the care that he believes he needs. And we do hear that. There are people who say, it wasn't until I attempted that I finally got attention, and that's a really disastrous and dangerous and a totally unacceptable way to have society working and the system working. I think that as long as there are so many of us, that we have to find communities where we can, you can sort of tell if you say to somebody, boy, I'm just really, having trouble doing things. I'm having trouble getting out of bed. And somebody says, yeah, me too. Or just kind of blows you off, then they're probably not the person to talk to. But if somebody says like, what do you mean? Or, oh, I feel that way too sometimes. Or have you talked to a doctor? You're with a safe person. You're with somebody who's going to listen, who's going to understand and not judge you. But they're not easy to find. I don't have a great support network. You would think that having done this for 4.5 years, that my friends would be like, hey, do you have depression still, or do you need anything? It's never happened. It's never happened. My friends who do not have depression have never checked in on me. My sister still does. I check in on her, but I think we all need to find the very few people in our life who get it. And if you don't have them in your life, then find them online, find them in a support community. I'd recommend ours, but there are also lots and lots of others. I'd recommend anything that works for you. And there are support groups, and there are therapy groups, and there are lots of resources, more than there have ever been. And again, back to COVID, more people than ever are aware of that fine line we can walk on between being okay and not being okay. Right. And before that was sort of hidden. There were those of us who had a mental illness, and there was everybody else who was fine. But the fine people aren't even fine all the time, and they sure aren't when things are really, really hard. You lose your job, and you're isolated, or whatever. Millions of things can happen that can impact you.
Sure. Somehow the word mental illness is so like overwhelming, I think, for when people take a look at it. And I think that's why we choose in our foundation is to use ill mental health rather than mental illness, because right. I think that we all suffer from ill mental health here and there. And it just seems not as overwhelming. So really help is really a click away from looking online or finding some support groups or going on some of the social media platform like yours that could be really that could be a life-saving.
It can be. I would also encourage people to be careful, because we have 2 people, myself and Sarah, watching ours 7 days a week, probably 18 hours a day. They're not all like that. I post every day. I'm not going to name the site, but on another site that's for teens. And I know that admin there is not highly responsive. And if someone puts something damaging up, you hear those stories. Someone says they want to die and someone says you should. That's not safe. That's not a good idea. That's not the kind of help anybody needs. And it happens. So, it has to be a controlled environment, has to be safe. And that's a hard thing to find.
Right. I have a question which has occurred to me as they were talking. How has depression in your case interfered with your eating behavior, with your eating habits?
That's an interesting question, because it's one of those, when you look at the signs and symptoms of depression, it's this or this, this or this. You sleep too little or too much. You eat too little or too much. I would say when I was in it, I wasn't getting up and making myself healthy meals. The idea of chopping up some, several different kinds of vegetables to put on my brown rice with a lovely little, low sodium sauce. No, that was not happening. There was a sink full of dishes, and, I might have grabbed a piece of bread and maybe popped it in the toaster. So again, I'm not in it that often anymore. Thank goodness. Thank lots of things. But no, it definitely affected my eating, and I would say I ate less and terribly. I mean, there are people who say that when they start eating a bunch of carbs, they know that's one of their warning signs, when they just stop caring what they're eating. I hear that a lot, actually, that it's like, uh-oh, I'm starting to just eat pizza or pasta or fast things, because you don't even really tune into the fact that caring for yourself has value, because self doesn't have a lot of value.
Yeah, so chocolate is not a cure, huh?
Well, I will keep trying. I will continue to do that research on your behalf, Dr. Korkor, and I will report back.
In a recent study that was done by the World Health Organization, they noted that there's a significant increase in mental health challenges worldwide, not just in the US, both in underdeveloped world as well as in developed world, as well as in emerging countries like China or India or other parts of the world. And it appears that seemed to parallel was a change in body habits, was increased rate of obesity in some of the societies, including our society to a great extent. Not to have a cause and effect relationship, but definitely they seem to see a parallel between the two, and with maybe being overweight has contributed to more of lack of self-esteem and as a result, more depression and anxiety has actually been taking place in parts of the world where, but I mean, this is just an observational thing, and I think it's one thing to keep in mind. The other question I have, the other issue I have, the question I have has to do with nature and walks and activities and things like that. As you know, the foundation is really centered around making sure that good body and good mind really works together. So having healthy body, healthy eating behavior, healthy active lifestyle, no smoking, little drinking, all of these are really important in maintaining not only good physical health, but also good mental health. Where do you see that?
Oh, I think there's no denying it. I think that what I've learned from
the role of nature and physical activity in depression. Do you see that? I
think that it plays its best role in staying out of it versus getting out of it. That's my experience, and that's from what about 250 people maybe now that I've interviewed with depression. I know that when I start to feel, and that's why I think it is critical to know your warning signs, when I start to feel the slide, I get out. I know that walking, I'm not a runner. I don't have a runner's body. I don't have a runner's anything. But walking, it is my cardiovascular. It is being in the fresh air. It is breaking the pattern of whatever environment I'm in. It is hearing nature, it is seeing nature. It is physically moving my body. It's a million things that I know are good for me. And it is part of my mental health toolkit to stay out of it. Again, in it, there's the hashtag proud of the shower, and that's because getting up and taking a shower can be hard. But I think that one of the main takeaways I have from 4.5 years of talking to people with depression is that the control we have is before we're in the depths, and that at that point we've got to do a million good things for ourselves, including eating well, including moving our bodies, including getting outside and realizing we're a part of something bigger than the nastiness in our heads, and that's the natural world. So I think there's absolutely a connection. And the gut health, there's a huge gut-mind connection. There's no denying it, but I think it is wickedly difficult to tap into when you're in the pits. And that's why, again, we have to just do everything we can to stay out of it.
Yeah, sounds like great. Absolutely. There's a Centurion study that came out in 5 regions in the world where people seem to live the longest, and where they appear not only to have good health in general, but also good mental health. One thing from that observation that seemed important is the fact that there's a lot of community living, people connected and related to each other, and there's friends and families, and they were very close, and there was a sense of family community network that they were all there for each other. And I think what we are living today in a society where we are all separate. I mean, we may be living in a neighborhood, but most of the time we don't know anybody who lives 2 doors down. And we could live in a neighborhood for 15 years and not know not even 1/4 or 10% of our neighbors. So I think part of it is that sense of isolation that you talked about, that feeling alone, is driven by how we have actually evolved into more or less living independently to the extent that we really don't need anybody until we have a serious crisis. So I think that my message to people also that are listening to the podcast is build your network of friends and family, connect with them, reach out to them, because that is by itself, that is an important, almost a vaccine that could prevent things from happening to you. And if they do happen, it wouldn't be as fast because you have good friends and good family members, or good people that you can rely on, that you can share with them your dreams, your thoughts, your ideas. And I think from listening to watching the video, that aloneness is something that I've experienced in my life as well. And I think we all do at times. And it reminds us of how important to stay connected.
Absolutely. And how important knowing that the responsibility that's on us as decent human beings, right? We need to, when we see someone, haven't seen someone in a long time, which is a little tricky again with the pandemic, to ask, how are you doing? But not just a, hey, how are you? Fine, excellent, bye, but to say like, this is hard. A lot of people are having a hard time right now. Are you, to make it clear that you actually, I think that the word really could save lives, because when you say, how are you? And they say, fine, you look them in the eye and say, really? That means I actually want to know, and I will take the time to listen to your answer. And that makes all the difference, because we just say fine. I say fine. I said fine in it. My mom said, how could I not have known? I said, I don't know. I saw you all the time. How didn't you know? I walked in like, there's a walk, there's an actual physical appearance of depression too. We might be smiling, but there's no spring in our step. So yes, I think that connection is huge. And again, I think that's another reason the pandemic has had such a toll on people, but we need to do that. If we know that it's difficult to reach out, then we are responsible for reaching in and just checking.
That's a great idea. Absolutely. Well, Terry, I could go on for a long time. I really, really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope those of you who are listening have also. So please reach out. Please don't let depression or anxiety despair you from reaching out and connecting with others and getting the help that you need. The A.B. Korkor Foundation is part of your journey. Our mission is to raise awareness, remove the stigma, and continue to enforce the role of physical wellness in mental health. We strongly believe in that, and we strongly believe that we together as a society and as a community can make mental health things that are not only accepted, but well cared for as part of everyday life in all of us. Many thanks, Terry, for sharing your journey.
Thank you, Dr. Korkor.
Many thanks for being open and honest about it, and for being part of the A.B. Korkor Foundation. Many thanks for all of you, and please, we could use your support. abkf.org is where we are, and please press on that donate button and help us continue to go on with our mission. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.